Did you know that the innocent trick-or-treating tradition you love today started as a terrifying ancient ritual where people believed the dead would literally rise from their graves and walk among the living? What began as one of humanity's darkest celebrations has transformed into something completely unrecognizable. And the real story behind Halloween will completely change how you see October 31st forever. I'm about to take you on a journey through 3,000 years of Halloween history, from blood-soaked Celtic rituals to billion-dollar costume industries, and you'll discover shocking truths that most people have never heard. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Halloween is actually one of the most fascinating cultural phenomena in human history, and why it reveals something profound about who we are as a species. Let's start at the very beginning in ancient Ireland, where Halloween's story begins not with candy and costumes, but with genuine terror and supernatural belief. Picture this. It's 2,000 years ago in what we now call Ireland, Scotland, and northern France. The Celtic people who lived there had a completely different relationship with death and the supernatural than we do today. They believed that the barrier between our world and the world of the dead wasn't permanent or solid. Instead, it was thin and fragile, and once a year, it would completely collapse. They called this night Samhain, pronounced Samhain, and it marked the end of their harvest season and the beginning of winter. But this wasn't just a seasonal celebration. The Celts genuinely believed that on the night of October 31st, the souls of everyone who had died in the past year would return to Earth, searching for bodies to possess so they could continue living. Think about how terrifying this must have been for these ancient people. They weren't dealing with cute ghosts and friendly spirits like we see in movies today. They believed that malevolent entities, demons, and the angry dead were literally walking among them, looking for victims. The Celts were so afraid of these supernatural visitors that they developed elaborate rituals to protect themselves. Here's where it gets really interesting. The Celts would light enormous bonfires, sometimes called bone fires, because they would literally burn the bones of animals as sacrifices. These fires weren't just for warmth or light. They believed the smoke and flames would create a barrier between the living and the dead, keeping the spirits at bay. But the most fascinating part is what they did to disguise themselves. The Celts would dress up in animal skins and wear grotesque masks, not for fun, but for survival. They believed that if they looked like spirits themselves, the real spirits wouldn't recognize them as living humans and would leave them alone. This is the true origin of wearing costumes on Halloween, and it's completely different from the playful dress-up we know today. The Celtic priests, called druids, played a crucial role in these ceremonies. They would make predictions about the future, communicate with the spirit world, and lead the community in protective rituals. Some historians believe they may have even practiced human sacrifice during particularly dangerous Samhain celebrations, though this remains highly debated among scholars. Now, you might be wondering how this terrifying Celtic tradition eventually became the Halloween we know today. The answer lies in one of history's most powerful forces: cultural conquest and religious transformation. In the 1st century CE, the Roman Empire conquered most of Celtic territory, and with conquest came cultural change. The Romans had their own festivals that occurred around the same time as Samhain, and over the centuries, these traditions began to blend and merge. The Romans celebrated Pomona, the goddess of fruit and trees, in late October. This is actually where we get some of our modern Halloween traditions, like bobbing for apples. The Romans also had a festival called Parentalia, where they honored their deceased ancestors, but their approach was much less fearful than the Celtic Samhain. But the real transformation came with the spread of Christianity throughout Europe. The Christian church was incredibly strategic in how they dealt with pagan traditions like Samhain. Instead of trying to completely eliminate these deeply rooted cultural practices, they decided to absorb and transform them. In the 8th century, Pope Gregory III designated November 1st as All Saints' Day, also known as All Hallows' Day. This was a day to honor all Christian saints and martyrs. The night before became known as All Hallows' Eve, which eventually became Halloween. By creating a Christian holiday that coincided with Samhain, the church was able to gradually replace pagan supernatural beliefs with Christian ones. The church later added November 2nd as All Souls' Day, creating a 3-day period called All Hallowtide. During this time, Christians would pray for the souls of the dead, but instead of fearing them like the Celts did, they would remember and honor them. This was a fundamental shift from terror to reverence. But here's what's really fascinating. Despite centuries of Christian influence, many of the original pagan elements of Samhain refused to disappear. People continued to believe in supernatural activity on Halloween night, continued to light bonfires, and continued to wear disguises. The ancient fear and fascination with death and the supernatural was too deeply embedded in human culture to be easily erased. As we move into the medieval period, Halloween began to develop some of the characteristics we recognize today, but in ways that might surprise you. Medieval Halloween wasn't the child-friendly celebration we know now. It was still considered a genuinely dangerous night when supernatural forces were active. During the Middle Ages, people began the practice of souling, which is the direct ancestor of modern trick-or-treating. On All Souls' Day, poor people would go from house to house, offering to pray for the dead in exchange for food. They would carry lanterns made from hollowed-out turnips, not pumpkins, and these carved vegetables were meant to represent souls trapped in purgatory. The wealthy would give these soulers special cakes called soul cakes, and in return, the soulers would promise to pray for the donor's deceased relatives. This practice gradually evolved from a religious obligation into something more playful, but it retained its connection to death and the supernatural. Meanwhile, in Scotland and Ireland, Halloween traditions were becoming even more elaborate and mysterious. Young people would engage in divination rituals, trying to predict their romantic futures and discover whom they would marry. They would peel apples in long strips and throw the peels over their shoulders, believing the shape the peel made when it landed would reveal the first initial of their future spouse. Scottish and Irish Halloween celebrations also included elaborate pranks and mischief, but these weren't harmless jokes like we might see today. Halloween pranks in medieval times could be genuinely destructive and were sometimes used as opportunities to settle scores or seek revenge against neighbors. The Protestant Reformation in the 16th century created another major shift in Halloween's evolution. Protestant churches rejected many Catholic traditions, including the veneration of saints and prayers for the dead. In Protestant countries like England, Halloween celebrations were often suppressed or discouraged as superstitious Catholic practices. However, this suppression had an unexpected consequence. Instead of disappearing, Halloween traditions went underground and became more focused on folklore, superstition, and secular celebration rather than religious observance. This secularization would prove crucial to Halloween's eventual global spread. Now we come to one of the most important chapters in Halloween's story, its journey to America. When European immigrants began arriving in colonial America, they brought their Halloween traditions with them. But these traditions would be transformed by the unique conditions of the New World. Initially, Halloween had very little presence in colonial America. especially in the strict Puritan communities of New England. The Puritans viewed Halloween as a pagan and Catholic tradition that had no place in their new Christian society. They actively suppressed Halloween celebrations and punished those who participated in them. But as more diverse groups of immigrants arrived, particularly from Ireland and Scotland, Halloween began to take root in American soil. The Irish immigration was especially important because Irish immigrants brought some of the most vivid and well-preserved Halloween traditions to America. Here's where the story gets really interesting. The transformation of Halloween in America wasn't just about preserving old traditions. It was about creating entirely new ones that reflected the American experience and values. The jack-o'-lantern is the perfect example of this cultural transformation. The tradition of carving scary faces into vegetables came from Ireland, where people carved turnips and potatoes. But when Irish immigrants arrived in America, they discovered pumpkins, which were native to North America and much larger and easier to carve than turnips. The legend of Jack-o'-lantern himself is a fascinating piece of folklore that made the journey from Ireland to America. According to Irish legend, Jack was a lazy but clever blacksmith who managed to trap the devil himself. When Jack died, he was denied entrance to both heaven and hell, so he was condemned to wander the earth forever with only a hollowed-out turnip with a piece of coal inside to light his way. In America, this story merged with the practical tradition of carving pumpkins, creating the jack-o'-lantern as we know it today. But the symbolism remained the same: a light in the darkness, protection against evil spirits, and a representation of souls trapped between worlds. The late 19th century marked the beginning of Halloween's transformation from a folk tradition into a commercial holiday. American entrepreneurs began to see the commercial potential in Halloween, and they started mass-producing Halloween decorations, costumes, and treats. The invention of mass-produced candy was particularly important to Halloween's evolution. Before the Industrial Revolution, treats given out on Halloween were homemade foods like soul cakes, nuts, or fruits. But as candy manufacturing became more sophisticated and affordable, commercially made sweets began to replace traditional homemade treats. This shift toward commercialization coincided with Halloween becoming more focused on children rather than adults. Throughout most of its history, Halloween had been primarily an adult celebration, often involving alcohol, romantic divination, and sometimes dangerous pranks. But in late 19th and early 20th century America, parents and community leaders began to reshape Halloween as a children's holiday. This transformation wasn't accidental. It was part of a broader social movement to create wholesome, supervised activities for young people. Community leaders worried about the destructive pranks and sometimes dangerous behavior associated with traditional Halloween celebrations. So they actively promoted Halloween as a child-centered holiday focused on innocent fun rather than supernatural fear. The early 20th century saw the establishment of many Halloween traditions we consider normal today. Trick-or-treating became standardized, with children going door to door in costumes and asking for candy. Halloween parties became popular community events. Schools began organizing Halloween parades and costume contests. But World War II created an unexpected interruption in Halloween's development. Sugar rationing during the war years meant that candy was scarce, and trick-or-treating was often canceled or severely limited. Some historians believe this wartime interruption actually helped solidify Halloween as a primarily American holiday, because when the war ended and Halloween celebrations resumed, they were uniquely American in character. The post-war boom of the 1950s marked Halloween's emergence as a major commercial holiday. Suburban development created ideal conditions for trick-or-treating, with safe neighborhoods, well-lit streets, and houses close together. Television shows and movies began featuring Halloween episodes and themes, further embedding the holiday in American popular culture. The 1970s and 80s brought both expansion and controversy to Halloween. The holiday became increasingly elaborate, with more sophisticated decorations, costumes, and celebrations. Halloween began to rival Christmas in terms of commercial importance and cultural significance. However, this period also saw the emergence of Halloween safety concerns and moral panic. Stories about poisoned candy and razor blades in apples, while largely unfounded, created lasting anxiety about Halloween safety. Some religious groups began to oppose Halloween as satanic or occult, leading to alternative celebrations like harvest festivals. Despite these controversies, Halloween continued to grow in popularity and commercial importance. The holiday began to spread internationally, carried by American movies, television shows, and corporate marketing. Countries that had never had Halloween traditions began adopting American-style Halloween celebrations. Today's Halloween is almost unrecognizable from its ancient Celtic origins. What began as a terrifying night when people genuinely believed the dead walked the earth has become a playful celebration of fantasy and make-believe. Yet underneath the commercialization and modernization, some of the original elements persist. We still dress up in costumes, though now for fun rather than protection. We still light jack-o'-lanterns, though now as decoration rather than spiritual barriers. We still tell scary stories and seek thrills, though now as entertainment rather than genuine supernatural encounters. The economic impact of modern Halloween is staggering. Americans spend over $10 billion annually on Halloween, making it the second largest commercial holiday after Christmas. This spending includes costumes, decorations, candy, and Halloween-themed entertainment. But perhaps most fascinating is how Halloween has become a global phenomenon while retaining its uniquely American characteristics. Countries around the world now celebrate Halloween, but they celebrate the American version. With American-style costumes, American candy, and American traditions like trick-or-treating. Halloween's journey from ancient Celtic terror to modern commercial celebration reveals something profound about human nature and cultural evolution. It shows how traditions can survive across millennia while completely transforming in meaning and practice. It demonstrates how cultures adapt foreign traditions to fit their own values and circumstances. Most importantly, Halloween's history reveals our persistent fascination with death, transformation, and the supernatural. Even in our modern, scientific age, we're still drawn to the same themes that terrified and fascinated our ancient ancestors. We still want to dress up as something we're not, to confront our fears in a safe environment, and to experience the thrill of the unknown. The story of Halloween is ultimately the story of human imagination and adaptability. It's a reminder that our holidays and traditions are living things that evolve and change while carrying forward essential aspects of human experience across generations and cultures. So the next time you carve a pumpkin, put on a costume, or hand out candy to trick-or-treaters, remember that you're participating in a tradition that connects you to thousands of years of human history. From Celtic druids lighting bonfires to protect themselves from wandering spirits, to modern families creating memories in suburban neighborhoods. Halloween's incredible journey from ancient terror to modern joy shows us that tradition isn't about preserving the past unchanged, but about finding new ways to express eternal human needs and desires. And that, perhaps, is the most magical thing about Halloween of all.